This is the Candid podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone, and thanks for listening in. For this episode, I'm going to be responding to a ridiculous modern-day feminist LinkedIn post. Podcast fodder seems to be coming in all different forms lately, and LinkedIn must have felt left behind, so it decided to gift me some material recently. I'm not at all surprised by this, as people have completely obliterated the entire purpose of LinkedIn and essentially turned it into another Facebook. I mean, nowadays, rarely is anyone on LinkedIn to, actually connect and network professionally. And people are posting memes, pictures of their pets, stories about their family lives, and pretty much anything else but what LinkedIn was originally designed for. And this post that I'm going to break down is right up that alley. It randomly popped up in my feed for God knows what reason, but after reading the entire thing, I instantly grabbed some screenshots of it, and I just knew that I had to make a podcast responding to this mess. This post was by a woman loaded up with tattoos all over her upper body, and she had the little rainbow symbol next to her name, which instantly clued me in on what to expect from her. And of course, she didn't disappoint. She's very clearly a modern-day feminist woman making a gender-baiting post on how women are apparently just cursed to such a horrible existence because they're shamed for every single thing they do in life, no matter what choices they make. This post was just a complete joke to me, to be quite honest. And this woman's fake and hypocritical agenda became very clear once I read one of her follow-up comments to some of the men who started replying to her long-winded diatribe. And there'll be more on that later on. The reason why I find this post so comical is because 85 to 90% of the BS she was spewing in her post was either incorrect or completely lacked context. And because the fact of the matter is that men get shamed just as much as women do. And for a lot of the same things she wrote in her post. So I'm not going to sit here and let her pretend like some of these points she was trying to make don't also apply to men as well. Shame is not something that's always geared towards females, as women carry an equal part of the shaming load when they attack men and put us down just as much as the opposite happens. Now, her post is fairly long, so what I'm going to do here is read through it and give my thoughts on her comments as I go along. And then I'm going to expand on one of her final points because it needs a deeper or more in-depth explanation, just so that my comments aren't taken the wrong way or out of context. Not that people ever do that. No, that never happens. And I'm especially not talking about these modern day feminist women. It's not like they love to do that. But I'm not going to let them twist my words up or try to label me as something simply because I didn't take enough time to fully explain my thoughts on this final point that this woman brought up. Okay, buckle up, everyone. Here's what this woman posted. So she started out with, "We are women and we are shamed." My response to that is, well, sorry to hear that, but guess what? Men are shamed just as much as you are. But you don't see us making LinkedIn posts about it, though. Everyone is shamed nowadays because that's just the world that we live in. It sucks, but it's on women just as much as it's on men to do better in this area. So not really sure what your point is here, but you know what? Sure, women are shamed. Next, she said, "We are shamed for getting pregnant accidentally." Facts. And guess what? Men are shamed for getting women pregnant accidentally as well. this one goes both ways. There have been many of men who have been told that they, quote, ruined their lives because they accidentally impregnated a girl/woman, and that's depending on what age you got her pregnant at, and especially at a very young age. So again, I fail to see her point here. The only difference is what names each gender is called. I mean, seriously, like women are often called Jezebels, or we'll say sleuths, for getting pregnant by mistake. And men are often called idiots or dummies for thinking with the wrong head, so to speak. I have yet to personally meet a man that got congratulated for accidentally knocking up a woman. So once again, this point falls completely flat here. Next thing she said is, we are shamed for having an abortion. This is the one and probably only point she made that I agree with. But again, it's very context sensitive. Depending on your religion and what you believe, and in cases where there wasn't a clear instance of assault of the sexual kind, or the baby's father being a relative like a dad or a brother, you get what I'm saying there. Some of us just have an issue with you punishing an innocent baby for your dumb mistake and skirting your responsibility. Now, I'm going to be clear here and say that I am not saying that shaming a woman who does terminate a pregnancy is okay. But once again, some of us have a moral issue with that, which is a whole can of worms I'm not going to get into for this podcast because it's just too deep and nuanced. But for the purpose of this podcast, I'm going to be fair because I'm always fair. And I can say that I do agree with the woman on this topic. But as a side note, I want to mention that us men also get shamed in this area, but oftentimes it's for not having a woman terminate a pregnancy, especially if the baby is with a woman the man doesn't like, a woman that has, we'll say, been around the block a few times, or if the woman works in a profession like adult entertainment or dancing on a pole at a gentleman's club. Men have been roasted for being a clown or a simp for getting trapped by women like this. So ironically, men and women both get shamed when it comes to this subject. It's just in opposite ways. Next, she said, we are shamed for being single mothers. Again, some context is needed here. Women who are single mothers because the boyfriend unexpectedly bounced after she got pregnant because he doesn't want to be a part of the child's life are rarely ever shamed. It's almost always the man who, rightfully so, is called a deadbeat piece of garbage for not stepping up, being a man, and taking care of his woman and child. Where the shame against a woman does come in this situation, and again, rightfully so, is when a woman gets pregnant by a guy that her and everyone else in the free world knows is a bad boy or for the streets. And then she wants to act shocked when the man does what bad boys do and bounce once the responsibility of a child comes along. Or the other and most common scenario is a woman having 3 to 4 kids with 3 to 4 different fathers, but she was never married to any of them. At some point, men don't shame the women. We just see a Titanic-sized red flag and we smartly choose not to engage for way too many reasons to list in this podcast. Next, she said, we are shamed for not wearing makeup. This one is just grasping at straws, people, and it's complete BS. She's just putting this in here to add to her victimhood. Most men consider it an absolute flex to have a woman that's naturally pretty and needs little to no makeup. We actually prefer women who wear less makeup as opposed to more. So this point right here is just fake news as far as I'm concerned. Moving on. She says we are shamed for wearing too much makeup. For this point, I'm going to refer back to my days on good old dating apps, which I do quite frequently. Women routinely complained on these dating apps about men hatfishing them, which is a man wearing a hat to cover up for the fact that he's bald. Or women would complain about men using spray-on hairlines to, again, cover up their baldness. Or women would complain about men not smiling to cover up their messed up teeth. Well, guess what? The same thing goes for women in makeup. Some of these women out here cake on tons of makeup, go on dating apps, and tack on some heavy filters, and you all literally transform yourselves into completely different looking people. There are many TikToks of women who are very below average looking, showing other women how to load up their faces with mountains of foundation and cake up to the point where they weren't even the same person. I'm talking about drawing in whole ass eyebrows and everything. It was scary. So in that context, no, men don't appreciate being deceived the same way women don't like being deceived either. And I can speak from personal experience that the excessive makeup along with the damn phone filters got my ass too. I once showed up on a date expecting a woman to look one way, but instead I ended up eating dinner with someone that looked like Grover from the damn Muppets. As long as a woman isn't using makeup and filters to deceive men online, men could care less what you do. But we absolutely will start throwing out makeup and cake up insults when the women start shaming us for whatever their flavor of the day insult for us men happens to be at that time. Next, she says, we are shamed for being too fat or too thin, too old or too young. Again, more victimhood here and grasping at straws. Men get shamed for the exact same things. Every single one of them. I just did a podcast on women's dating standards, and I talked about a dating profile where the woman says she doesn't want a man with no titties, which certainly sounds like fat shaming to me. And hell, you women have even convinced your chunky ass counterparts that it's okay for them to only desire fit men because fit men are more attractive. So the fact that this woman had the audacity to complain about looks is so very comical to me. On top of all that, not only do men get shamed for being too fat, too thin, too old, or too young, we also get shamed for things we can't control, like being too short, both in our height and in Johnson length. And while we're at it, we also get shamed for not enough girth in our Johnson as well. We get shamed for losing our hair like it's our choice. And we get shamed and called broke for not making $100K plus a year like it's something we could just snap our fingers and change. So cut the BS on this one. This woman's capping real hard here. Next, we are shamed for not wanting children. Again, I call BS here. With the state of the world and parenting these days, both men and women are actually being commended for not having kids if they don't want them, or if they feel they just wouldn't be a responsible or good parent. I do understand that there may be family pressure to pop out some grandkids for mom and dad, but on a whole, women aren't being shamed for not wanting children. Like I said earlier, this is more cap, and I really don't have much else to say here. Next, she says, or we are shamed for sacrificing our careers for our children and vice versa. And the cap continues. More straw grasping. Who the hell in their right mind shames a mother for sacrificing her career for her children? At this point, I really believe this woman is just making stuff up to make her post longer and try to make the impact seem more devastating, because this is ridiculous. I've never heard of a woman being shamed for being a good parent and putting her children over her career, like ever, as in ever. What person is going to say, yeah, them kids is cool and all, but F them, you need to focus more on your career, girl? Man, stop it. You sound ridiculous. And if we're talking vice versa, sacrificing having children to focus on your career is completely fine if that's what you want to do. But if you're talking sacrificing being a good parent to your kids to focus on your career, then you absolutely should be shamed for that, because that makes you a selfish piece of garbage. Those kids didn't ask to be brought into this world. So if you choose to neglect their emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being just so that you can climb the corporate ladder and accomplish things for your own self, then you deserve every bit of shame that comes your way. And that goes for both men and women. What the hell is wrong with you people? Next, we are shamed for sleeping with too many men. Yep, as you should be. And just as men should be as well. Because most of us rational thinkers feel it's nasty, and we recognize the negative ramifications of people thotting around. But the problem here is squarely on women's shoulders, so you need to blame yourselves, not us men. See, men have long stated that we want women who have as few sexual partners as possible, preferably none, for many reasons. Well, that's another podcast. But an extremely important reason is pair bonding. Granted, I understand there's no scientific facts or evidence around this, but plenty of men have experienced long-term issues trying to form serious relationships with women who have had many sex partners. And if you're a spiritual person, many of us believe that you give a part of yourself to someone that you have sex with, and that you also take on a part of their spirit as well. And that can cause major issues in the long run when it finally comes time to settle down with one man. I've talked to plenty of men who've been cheated on because their women went back to an ex-boyfriend they just couldn't get over because he did sex this way, or because the woman said his Johnson was bigger, etc., etc. Sex is usually way more emotional for women than it is for men. So a woman with too many sex partners just isn't appealing to men because of the potential emotional roadblocks we have to overcome just to make things work. Most men feel like the more sex partners a woman has, the harder it's going to be for the next man to measure up to all of your past experiences, because we all know women love to compare men to each other. And when I said this problem is squarely on women's shoulders, so blame yourselves and not men, there's two reasons for that. First, we've told you what we prefer in a long-term partner, but you're absolutely free to live your life how you want to. That's your choice, and that's cool. But you can't turn around and get upset when you find the man of your dreams and he doesn't want to settle down with you because the notches in your sexual belt are in the double digits. And I say sexual belt because I hate saying body count. And secondly, you women could choose to shame men for the exact same thing, and I will admit a few of you do, and I'm all for it. In recent years, people like Elon Musk, Nick Cannon, and even Cam Newton to an extent have been shamed by women for sticking their Johnsons any and everywhere and having a whole ass football team full of children, and I completely agree with the women. With that being said, though, the overwhelming amount of women have chosen to not care about men's sex partners, mostly because you all feel it may work out to your benefit. I've heard more women than I can count expressed that too many men don't know what they're doing when it comes time to have sex. So a man having a lot of experience in this area ends up benefiting the woman. So basically, you women look at a man with multiple sex partners being better in bed as an end justifies the means type of scenario, which is fine. But how is that men's fault? You're the ones choosing not to shame nasty men, but yet you get upset when the reverse happens. And not only that, we all know that women only want men who other women want. I don't understand why, but that's how y'all think. And hell, I don't think I've even had one woman I've dated in the past ever ask or even care about how many sex partners I've had. Now, does that mean that no women care at all? Of course not. I'm sure some of you do. But again, you're not going to put sex shaming squarely on men and demonize us for it when you're free to do the exact same thing, yet you just choose not to. Next, or we are shamed for being frigid. Again, I'm calling BS here. Men overwhelmingly would rather have a virgin over a woman who's had multiple sex partners. If you're being frigid in your marriage, then that's a serious issue, and you and your partner need to get some professional help right away. Otherwise, the only other time this type of thing happens is when, once again, you women want to date a bad boy or an F boy over a good guy because the bad boy and the F boy is exciting and mysterious and rebellious and aggressive and all those other things. And the bad boy or the F boy wants to do bad boy or F boy things, which includes nailing you front, back, side to side, and every which way in between. Now, of course, I can't say that it's 100% universal across the board that this is always the case. But more oftentimes than not, that's exactly how the situation goes. There are plenty of good men out there who will be willing to wait until marriage for sex if they think you're the right woman. You're just not picking those men. Next, we are shamed for selling our bodies, but someone is rarely shamed for buying them. Yes, women are shamed for selling their bodies for multiple reasons, one of which is a word that you all hate, which is accountability. Because once that body is used up and the money runs dry, you all want to go straight to blaming men for your poor decisions. And when no man wants to wife you up because every man in 100 square mile radius has been with you, instead of you looking in the mirror and seeing who's really at fault for your situation. Or you try to lie and make it seem as if you had no other recourse than to sell your bodies for cash when that's not true either. You just didn't want to get a regular ass job making regular ass money and work hard. But instead, you want that good money right away so you can live a baller lifestyle. And even though I said yes at the beginning of this point, I still maintain that the fake news train keeps rolling on. Go look at any red pill content channel, Facebook groups, Facebook posts, all of that. And you will constantly see men getting shamed and clowned for buying porn and subscribing to OnlyFools content. So it's a complete lie to say that men are never shamed for buying your bodies. Just like no one can stop you from selling your bodies, no one can stop another man from buying your content, but we damn sure shame the hell out of other guys for doing it. I promise you that. Next line, we are shamed for being beautiful and using it to our advantage. Let me ask you a question here. Why shouldn't you be shamed for this? So you're saying that it's okay for you to use something like you having a pretty face or having a voluptuous front or backside, things that are purely genetic to your advantage. You're saying that's okay. And I do understand you can sometimes work hard in the gym for a bigger backside, But outside of plastic surgery, your chest and your face are purely genetic. So you're saying that just because you won the luck of the draw physically in life, that you deserve more in life? That kind of mindset seems to be in very stark contrast to this post, which is so desperately trying to come across as being all righteous and upstanding. And this is especially true coming from a man-hating feminist, more on that later, then I'm sure would have her bloomers all in a bunch at any man that would say us men deserve or are entitled to certain things simply because of our genetics. See, this right here is a page right out of the typical female playbook. Certain things like using your gender or your looks to get what you want or advance in society are perfectly okay as long as it benefits women. But when the opposite is true, then it's abhorrent. Us men should be ashamed and we all need to do better. I mean, this is a classic example of the blatant double standard that way too many women live by these days. Next one, or we are shamed for not making an effort to look nice. Again, where and how? What's the context behind this? I don't know any scenarios where this would be an issue unless you're going out to a nice fancy dinner, a wedding, or a place where the occasion calls for looking nice and you don't put in any effort or you walk out the house looking like a slob. And I mean, if that's the case, how is it wrong to call you out on that? And the exact same thing would apply to a man who showed up to one of these events looking disheveled with a matted up beard, his hair all over the place, dirty ass shoes, etc., etc. I mean, again, this seems to be yet another point where this woman is trying to make a woman issue out of something that applies equally to both men and women. Next, we're called aggressive, not assertive. As is the same with men, this one is all about your tone. Men who talk down to people and are willing to step on people to get what they want are often called douchebags or assholes, while women who do the exact same thing are often called the B word. So once again, I fail to see the difference here. And speaking from personal experience, I have worked with some of the coolest women walking the earth. But I can say without a doubt that women who ascend the ranks in corporate America oftentimes do let that power go to their heads. And they are much less friendly and approachable than their male counterparts. So this sounds like a you problem for women to address. Fix your nasty ass attitudes and stop letting power corrupt you. Simple. I have worked with men at the C-suite level, chief information officer, chief technology officer, yada, 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 that you legit never know were at the C-suite executive level. Yet a lot of women at that same level had to attempt to always assert their perceived dominance and be overly aggressive so that you knew exactly who they were and who the boss was. Another example I can think of was at my former gym. There was a woman who was the manager of the gym and she was in her early 20s. And I'm not going to lie, she was smoking. Long blonde hair, body that would stop traffic. And she was a pretty privilege. And she had one of the worst attitudes of anybody that I've seen that runs a gym. She let the power get to her head. She routinely got off on firing people left and right. There was new workers there every other week because she got off on firing people. She got off on revoking memberships, and she was just all around not a very pleasant person. Eventually, they smartly got rid of her and brought a dude in there, and it's the complete opposite now. Dude's one of the most chill and nicest people that you've ever seen. Now, am I saying that every single woman is like this? No. But the point that I'm making is that more often than not, I have seen women get that power and let it go to their head. And they don't become just assertive, they become aggressive and essentially a female asshole. Most men, myself included, have been managed by women and have had no issues with it whatsoever. But again, it's all about your attitude. A great example of this is women who power lift or women who work out in general. I have seen it time and time again where you all think just because you can hit 2 wheels on each side of the bar for a rep or 2 on the deadlift, that all of a sudden you're Wonder Woman. And the first thing you want to do is start crapping on men. I can probably lift more than you, so weak men can't handle me. Is a prime example of women getting just a small taste of power and then turning into these aggressive, arrogant assholes who have to try and show that you're dominant somehow. Either way, I'm sticking with what I said at the beginning. It's all about your tone and attitude. Nobody likes an asshole, no matter if it's a man or a woman, period. Her next point. We're called difficult for having boundaries. This is yet another one that lacks context. What the hell exactly do you mean here? If you're talking about any man just being able to walk up to you and touch you, I don't think any reasonable man would ever have an issue with you having those kinds of boundaries. That's completely fair. If you're talking sexual boundaries with a partner, again, oftentimes this comes up with you all wanting to date a bad boy who you want to be a good boy with you. But when he starts pushing your boundaries and wanting to get it in with you, you refuse to blame your poor choices on yourself, but instead blame it on the man. I mean, honestly, without context here, I really have no idea what situations this woman's talking about. Some of these women try to claim a man violates her boundaries by just standing too close to her when he's trying to speak to her about something. You all love to accuse men of violating your personal space when they're simply trying to have a simple conversation about something with you, or they may be approaching you because they like you or find you attractive. And in my opinion, as long as the man is respectful and polite, even if you don't like him, you cannot accuse him of violating your boundaries simply because you don't like him or find him attractive. I don't know. I'm going to just leave this one here because more context is needed for this one, but I'm still smelling some BS in the air. Next one, we're shamed for showing too much emotion and called cold if we don't. This is yet another example here of her reaching for straws and trying to make a gender-neutral problem strictly a female problem. Newsflash, men get shamed every single day for showing too much emotion, especially crying. Men are often considered weak and less manly for letting our emotions be seen by anyone other than ourselves, and women absolutely play a part in that as well. Now, I will admit, there are some women that claim they want a man to show his emotions, but some other women have admitted that when they saw their man cry, they lost a little bit of respect for him because it made him look weak and his illusion of toughness and strength had been shattered right in front of her. Men are also called cold and robotic if they don't show a certain personality or get emotional. And some women have even gone as far as to say that they fear men like that because he's giving off a serial unaliver vibe. So we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. Sorry, ladies, but this point is a blatant lie. Most people are often sympathetic and comforting to women who get emotional, whereas men are looked at like the B word or punks for doing so. So while I'm on this topic, I'm going to clear something up really quick. What this woman probably meant to say, but didn't, because it would be something women needed to actually fix, is that women are shamed for making decisions driven by their emotions instead of using logic. See, most men have a mechanism in them that allows us to put our emotions aside and make the correct decision / do the right thing, no matter how we're personally feeling at that time. But on the opposite side of things, Women will, more oftentimes than not, make decisions while they're emotional, oftentimes angry, that cater to that emotion in an effort to hurt a man they're upset at. We have seen this countless amounts of times with women keeping men's children away from them because the man doesn't want to be with the woman anymore, or the man's with another woman. Women lying on a man, trying to take everything from him during a divorce in an attempt to ruin his life simply because the woman is upset. Or even women going out thirsting on social media for likes, attention, and maybe even set up a little sneaky link because her and her boyfriend just had an argument and the woman is upset. Like it or not, but women are much more emotional creatures than men are, which us men have accepted. But what we don't accept is women making irrational and stupid decisions based off of how they're feeling at the time, because the consequences are sometimes extremely hurtful or even downright devastating, and a simple "sorry, I was really mad at the time" ain't good enough to make up for it. This one's a doozy. We're told assault is our fault because of what we wore, how much we had to drink, where we walked, or how we behaved. This was one of her last major points, if you want to call it. And I'm actually glad she left it till basically the end, because I want to make sure that I thoroughly clarify my thoughts on this one before I finish reading the remainder of this post. Let me be as clear as I possibly can here. Any man that forces himself on a woman against her will is one of the lowest forms of life on this earth. And similar to the punishment I suggested for pedos I made in a previous podcast, I wouldn't mind men who are tried and convicted of doing this kind of thing being taken out back and put down like an old horse, or at the very least have their junk whacked off or get sterilized and move on from there. There is no place for this type of act to happen in any society that ends up leaving women with the kind of lifelong, emotional, and sometimes physical trauma that comes along with it. Men who commit these types of crimes are scum of the earth, and I have absolutely zero compassion for them. Now, I hope I made myself crystal clear with what I just said, because now I want to discuss this point in a bit more detail. First off, there's always going to be nasty, evil trolls out there who will make fun of your situation, play the blame game, etc., no matter what happened to you and no matter if you're a man or a woman. Obviously, I'm not excusing this. I'm just telling you, this is the world that we live in now. There's always going to be trolls. I've been in buy, sell, trade Facebook groups where people have been scammed despite doing their due diligence, and men will laugh at other men and blame them for being stupid, tell them a fool and his money is soon parted, all kinds of stuff. And while I completely understand this is nowhere near in comparison to a woman being assaulted, I'm just trying to show that victim shaming happens to everyone. Trolls are gonna troll, unfortunately. But when you throw the obvious trolls aside, I have not seen men blame women for what they wore or where they walked for getting assaulted. What we have tried to tell women that most don't want to listen to is that women will oftentimes wear certain things and combine that with walking in certain areas and then get shocked when they get a bunch of attention, catcalls, and all that kind of stuff. Too many women seem to be under the impression that the world operates fairly and that you can just walk around wearing what you want, walking where you want, at any time you want, and that somehow those actions don't put you in extra danger. And that's just not how the world works for anyone. For example, if a grown-ass man is walking through a known bad neighborhood with tons of jewelry visibly around his neck and he gets robbed, Of course, the robbers are wrong. We're not saying that you deserve for that to happen. But we will ask, was it a smart idea for the man to be walking around that terrible neighborhood with tons of jewelry visibly around his neck, essentially advertising, come get me? No, it wasn't. And it doesn't matter if that's fair or not. That's just the world that we live in. And sure, he could have been robbed in a gated community in a suburb, but the chances of that happening are far less than him walking through a neighborhood that even the Afghans wouldn't want to live in with a whole bunch of bling on. So oftentimes men are not blaming you or saying that it's okay that you were assaulted, because it's not. But sometimes the circumstances, such as what you were wearing, where you were walking, and at what time of night, leave us puzzled as to why you chose to make decisions that increase the likelihood of something bad happening to you. Furthermore, I looked up the numbers, and a whopping 75% of all assaults of the sexual nature against women were by people the women knew in some form. So what she wore and how she dressed seems to be much less of a factor in these cases than who she knew or who she hung out with. And once again, no, I'm not questioning the woman's choice of friends, simply giving you the facts. And I'm not going to go down that whole rabbit hole because there are just too many factors that none of us could ever fully know when it comes to that subject and what went on in each individual case. So I'm just going to move on from that. Now, one thing that I do want to address here is that in certain scenarios women have given and said they were assaulted, some men do ask what the woman was drinking and how she was acting, and that's because the story ain't always adding up. And like it or not, ladies, but more and more instances are coming out of women lying about being assaulted when that wasn't the case at all. In a previous podcast I made, I mentioned the former MLB pitcher Trevor Bauer, who was raked over the coals all over ESPN, skewered in the media, and ended up getting cut from his team, which ultimately cost him over $200 million in potential future earnings, simply because a woman lied about a consensual, very rough sex encounter she had and claiming that she was beaten and assaulted by him. It turned out the whole thing was a setup that the woman's friends, text messages, and even video evidence on her own damn phone confirmed. All in an attempt to juice Trevor Bauer out of his money and what I'm going to call a sexual shakedown. There are plenty of other instances where women go to a bar, get drunk, and are seen grinding on a man they met there. They'll leave with the man. Surveillance video shows the woman get into the man's car and then exit 15 to 20 minutes later after she's done blowing him or having relations with him, only for her to later claim assault and say that she can't remember what happened because she blacked out at the bar and then woke up to being assaulted or woke up after being assaulted. This kind of thing is more common than you think, and it commonly happens when women are married or in a relationship. They have too much to drink, they get loose, and they do something they shouldn't have. And instead of taking accountability, they lie to save face and pretend like they were assaulted. Other times, it's just pure good old shame and regret that they went to a bar and did some nasty acts with a rando dude. So again, they make themselves feel better mentally by concocting some kind of story about being assaulted. And while I keep talking about previous podcasts that I made, I mentioned in a previous podcast about a very chunky woman that I knew who went to a bar one night, got drunk, and did some absolutely foul and nasty things with a fit man she had met there. Well, guess what? She ended up regretting it, just like most women do. But I will give her credit and say, thankfully, she didn't make any claims of assault. Now, of course, she still didn't take any accountability for her actions and instead blamed it on the liquor making her do it, the fact that she was going through a rough patch in her life at the time and wasn't thinking clearly. Life just didn't mean much to her. And because fire is hot, ice is cold, and grass is green. These are the kinds of things that men see and hear that will make us question, how much did you have to drink? Or how were you acting? When a woman's assault story isn't adding up at all. Now, there are obviously a ton of innocent female victims of assault out there, but that simply does not give women the right to levy claims against a man without us being able to ask questions in return, especially when things sound suspicious. As I just said, we're seeing more instances of women found to be lying about what really happened in an assault incident. So if women want to blame anyone for our growing doubt, blame yourselves sometimes. Tell your sisters to stop lying just to get a bag or escape accountability. It's just that simple. I've made my point pretty clear here, so I'm going to move on from this point and read the remainder of this post. She goes on to say, and the shame doesn't just come from men. It comes from each other. It is a disease that spreads too easily and infects too many, leaving us unsure how to simply exist as ourselves. Well, I'll tell you what, this is where I get really, really confused. And I'm feeling like I'm the one who's damn unsure. Unsure of what point this whole post is trying to make. What do you mean exist as yourself? Women have always and will always do what they want to do because they're free to do so. And it's their God-given right, at least in this country. So what exactly is this woman getting at here? And it's especially puzzling coming from a clear feminist, because modern day feminism is all about that F-men action and women living how they want to, doing what they want to, and not giving one bit of a damn what anyone thinks, especially men. But now all of a sudden you care what people think and you simply can't exist as yourself? Question: which one is it here, Miss Feminist Lady? Do you still want to conform to some kind of social gender norms because that's what most traditional men want and you do secretly care? Or are you all about that F-men action, I am every woman, hear me roar? I'm confused. And frankly, it sounds like you are too. She finishes up by saying, we are women, we are shamed, but we are women and we are strong. Stronger when we come together. Stronger when we support one another, stronger when we stop shaming each other for simply existing as we choose to. I mean, okay, I really have no issue with what she's saying here. This is probably like the second thing she said that I actually agree with her on. But I mean, I have no issue with what she said here. But I do have a major issue with her second to last sentence, which reads as follows: stronger when our male allies stand tall behind us. This is some of the most disgusting BS this woman has said so far. And her own comments that I'm about to expose prove these words to be just as hollow and fake as her post was. See, this woman only wants men to be an ally when it works in her favor and benefits women. Otherwise, she literally thinks men are beneath her. This one line that I just read and the quote that I'm going to read that she made are the exact reasons why I'll never be an ally of women like this. So, of course, after she made this post on LinkedIn, A bunch of simp, weak, submissive men started replying, playing the pick me game, glazing all over her post and talking about how strong she was. While one post in particular from one of these sub men reads like this: "You are a woman, hear you roar, and I'd hate to see what happens to anyone who tries to shame you. Here's a hint. Absolutely not a damn thing's gonna happen to anybody who tries to shame her." This feminine man went on to say, "Women are most definitely the superior species if you ask me." To which the woman who made this entire post replied, "I think most people realize that's the case. That's why the patriarchy tries to keep us down." And yes, I have a screenshot of this little exchange. This very comment by her is the exact reason why I have no issue tearing her entire post to shreds and refusing to support women like her. First off, only delusional women think they're superior to men. And even though I get on women for some of the things they're doing nowadays, I have never said that men are superior to women in any way, shape, or form. Yet to this feminist lion, men are only good enough to stand with her when she needs them. But by her own words, she secretly feels that we're beneath her and that women are better than us. This woman is a fraudulent piece of garbage that pretty much entails this whole modern day feminist movement. Men aren't ish to women until you need our support. Then you want us to stand with you. I don't want to digress too much, but this same theme played out during the recent election when the whole abortion rights thing was on the table. Then all of a sudden, women who didn't need us before were begging us to vote in favor of bills and politicians that would benefit women. Women are only strong and independent until they're not. This woman finished this post with this final sentence that read, "I am a woman and I am shamed, but I am strong and I won't let their shame stop me." Even this final sentence is frankly confusing as hell, like pretty much the rest of her nonsensical rant, because she references being a woman, but then also says their shame. And one can only assume she's talking about us horrible, misogynistic men. Yet just a few sentences ago, she just said that women shame other women too. I don't know. Honestly, I've lost too many brain cells on this post as it is, so I'm not even going to bother trying to decipher this last statement. My only reply to this mess is, sure, okay. Anyway, that was the end of her glorious post. And honestly, I really don't have much to say that hasn't already been said. I am definitely going to put screenshots of this post that include the woman's name on my YouTube posts page. Hell, she posted this publicly on LinkedIn, so I have no shame in putting her name and comments on blast for YouTube viewers to see as well. As I just said a minute ago, I really don't have much else to say other than I'm just sick of a lot of this misleading BS from women like this. Like I said at the beginning, most of the stuff in her post applies to both men and women universally. Yet she was trying to frame things in a way that made it seem like these things only happen to poor innocent women exclusively. Obviously, things like assault of the sexual kind do happen to men, but it's so much more common for it to happen to a woman than a man. And no sane person is going to deny that. Other than that point, this LinkedIn post was nothing but a bunch of fake garbage being posted under false pretenses and with the explicit purpose of trying to demonize men and further the modern day feminist agenda. But I did get a good podcast out of it, so at least it was good for something positive after all. As always, if you're listening in on YouTube, I appreciate a like, a subscribe, or you leaving a comment. I'm continuing to try to bring you great content, and I hope that you enjoy the kind of podcast that I'm bringing to you. Thanks for listening in. I will catch you on the next one.